Hey, good afternoon. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. This afternoon, I'm really pleased and honored to have with me as my guest John Hueston, who's the founding partner of Hueston Hennigan. John, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, John, you obviously have this incredible career, but let me start by asking you, maybe taking you back in time. What made you want to be a lawyer in the first place?
Well, I was just sharing this story with my kids.
Oh,
In fact, when I was in college, back at Dartmouth College, in the mid 80s, there were anti-apartheid movements that I was a part of and was a leader in, and led a sit-in in the president's office
hmm,
and some other protest work that eventually led to my arrest for trespassing, for trying to stop the removal of shanties, protest shanties on the campus of Dartmouth College at the time.
hmm.
And it was my work in that movement that inspired me to try to pursue a career of change in the law.
Interesting. Now, when you went to law school, did you have a specific kind of career goal in mind or anything specific you wanted to do?
When I went to law school, it really was with the notion of, will I be able to find a career where I'm going to be able to make a real difference um, in the public? And I didn't know exactly how that was going to unfold. I
Hmm.
have a very specific memory, though, of I went to Yale Law School, and at the time they had hardbound binders with feedback from recent graduates from different career positions. And the one that struck me was one coming from the prosecutor's office, the U.S. Attorney's office in the Southern District of New York.
Hmm.
And a prosecutor's career was not one that I thought I would have liked. But what really jumped out at me from the description was that this person was involved prosecuting crimes of greed rather than crimes of need. And I thought, I think I might be very interested in doing that too. I went on and clerked for a civil rights legend, Frank M. Johnson Jr., who oversaw the Selma and Montgomery March case, the other King cases. And he himself was a former U.S. attorney and urged me to go to the U.S. Attorney's office, which I did after a couple of years at O'Melveny, went to the U.S. Attorney's office
Huh.
in Los Angeles, and later on to the Enron task force at DOJ.
Wow, amazing. Now, I take it you kind of knew though you wanted to be a litigator. Did you ever even consider being a corporate or transactional lawyer at any time?
Oh, no, I really never did. I mean, I was taken by really being, I think, in my mind, a person I thought of action. And I'm sure transactional lawyers think of themselves as people of action too. But the archetype for me was always the trial lawyer,
Yeah, yeah.
the Thurgood Marshalls and others who, by dint of hard work and courtroom success, were making impactful changes on American society.
Now, did you come from a family of lawyers? Any lawyers that inspired you when you were young?
No, not at all. In fact, I was raised mostly by my mom, who was the youngest, the sixth child of Irish immigrants. There wasn't enough money to send her to college.
Hmm.
I wasn't, there was one uncle who paid his way through Fordham Law School, but that was the only lawyer in our family. So there wasn't a family history of that. It was mostly, my mom encouraging me to go out and try to make a difference.
Yeah. So when you were in the government, it sounds like you spent a long time there. I'm taking it you really enjoyed it. What made you decide to actually go back to private practice or leave the government?
Well, I think the hardest thing about government is knowing when to leave.
Yeah.
I promised my wife at the time, we were living like college students throughout my 13 years in government, that as I would only stay as long as my learning curve was very, very steep. And I said, if I did that, everything should work out. In fact, I had a wonderful mentor, Irving Shapiro, who had been at Skadden, and he was, I think, the first Jewish CEO of DuPont, who told me the most important thing you can do in your first 10 years out of law school is keep your learning curve as steep as possible, and then all other things will come to you. And that is the most important piece of advice that I've had in my career and pushed me forward. So when I was in government, I very much enjoyed what I did there. specialized in corporate crime and public corruption cases. Became a chief in the Los Angeles office, was prepared to leave at one point, and then there was an invitation to interview with the Enron task force as they were creating a national team as the cases were coming together against Lay and Skilling, and that led to a longer tenure. But once I finished that case and trial, which was, often called the criminal trial of the century at the
Yeah,
time,
right.
I felt like I could no longer go back to my wife and say, another few years will keep that learning curve steep. It was time to move forward to different challenges.
And what kind of practice did you then go back to in private practice, and how did you figure out what you wanted to do?
And it's something that it's a process I went through that I talk to government attorneys now about, that you have to think very, very carefully about not the logical or easiest next step. For instance, many people leave as prosecutors and become white-collar defense attorneys, but then find themselves 5-10 years down that pathway very unhappy with their choice because they're rarely in trial. They're not having many court appearances, though they may have great success running investigations. And upon a lot of reflection, what I realized was, aside from the pride of standing up and saying, my name is John Hueston and I represent the United States, what I really loved about my job was preparing for and working collaboratively with team members at trial. And so I felt like I took a tougher road out to establish a broad trial practice, a civil trial practice. And that required me to sell prospective clients on the transferability of my trial skills from the government to the civil sector. And, I worked on that first at Irell and Manella for 8 years, building their trial practice before we eventually launched our own firm with that very focus.
Now, initially, was that a hard transition, the one you just described, or was it not that difficult? Or what was difficult about or challenging about doing that transition?
I think the challenge was that it took a tremendous amount of work and initiative, but it wasn't hard in the sense that I was very excited to do it. So I knew that I had to pitch why my work background and its relevance to prospective clients. So coming off Enron, I came up with a number of presentations that lessons learned from Enron for the boardroom. And other sorts of presentations that gave me entree into boardrooms with general counsel, that gave me a chance to pitch, giving me and my firm opportunities to make a difference in some of their civil litigation. And, you're slow. They may give you one small case and then another to build your career. In many ways, it's no different than the long pathway it takes to build your credibility in a niche. The hard part being I had ascended to the very top in government service in terms of trial work there, and I had to start with that resume and background down near the bottom to build a client base over time. But because it was exciting, it didn't feel like hard work.
Well, you obviously could have stayed at Irell and had a very successful career. What made you decide to leave that and start your own firm and then become an entrepreneur, essentially? What motivated that?
Well, you put your finger on it with the last thing you said, to become more of an entrepreneur in the law. I had a wonderful career at Irell, and they were very supportive and helped me build the successful practice that I had. But I had gotten to the point where I wanted more freedom to define a more singular mission in my practice and the practice of others in my group. And that was a vision to be broadly the preeminent U.S. trial firm. To do that from a small platform and to do it differently from what I saw on most big law platforms. To develop our attorneys internally, to take very few laterals, to train them to become first chair trial lawyers like we had once done at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and to promote a collaborative culture in approaching and building a client base. So at our firm, there would never be such and such as John Hueston's client or Moaz Kaba's client. These clients are the firm's client. And that kind of premise for a firm excited the people I was working with. and we decided to take the plunge, and it's been really a lot of fun. So I
Yeah.
get to pursue the trial practice, but also have the excitement of having a unique and defined mission in the law with people who have the same vision.
Now, was the idea or the vision behind this something that, you sat with for years and years and years, or you just wake up one morning and had a dream and then just decide to start it?
I think the fairest way to describe it would be an evolution. As you know, as I discussed earlier, I realized as I was completing my government service that what I really love doing is trial work.
Mm.
And as I built the complex litigation and trial practice at Irell and Manella, I really kept focusing on that aspect of my career, and realized that while most big law platforms were increasingly defining subspecialties, substantive specialties like IP practice or theft of trade secrets, or antitrust, there really weren't many firms, business trial firms, defined as having trial work as their specialty. And so that was sort of the dawning realization about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, that there is an opportunity in the marketplace in an area that I feel like I had long been focused on. And so we sort of grabbed that idea and ran with it.
Now, how do you divide your time between practicing law and kind of running a firm? I mean, obviously, those are probably both full-time jobs. It's not easy to start a new firm and all the things that are required about, being a chair and running the firm. How do you balance that with actually staying, a practicing lawyer?
Well, we have about 90 lawyers. We have 16 partners, and each of our partners takes on an aspect of some firm supervision and management.
Mm.
And we have very little bureaucracy. Our original managing partner was Brian Hennigan, and currently it's Moaz Kaba. So they would have a certain amount of extra administrative burdens. But really, each of the idea of this firm is, look, we're small enough, we're lean enough that each of us can take areas and not have to push all that on a single partner and move them out of the sweet spot of their trial practice. And so we've been able to manage to have management at 5% maybe of our respective workloads.
Well, 90 lawyers sounds like just tremendous growth. When you started the firm, how big did you think it was going to be, or did you think it would get to this size, or did you have an idea?
We did not know where this would go, except we did have some controlling principles. So we always thought, first, we knew we had to launch with enough lawyers to convince our clients that we had a critical mass to handle multiple bet the company cases at the same time. And so we wanted to launch with a minimum of 20 attorneys. We launched with 30. All our clients came with us and were assured by that. And the second guiding principle was, if we do well, we will have increased work opportunities and hiring opportunities, but we should just incrementally grow with the work, but never grow so large as to get to the point where we don't know everyone else in the firm. So there's not a magic number there, but 90, 100, maybe 120 might be the sweet spot in terms of our numbers. But I have found that it's important not to put out those sorts of numerical goals, but rather have qualitative goals, and then to keep talking with trusted partners, to keep thinking about whether we're on our mission per our principles. And so far we have been.
Well, kind of looking for into the future. I mean, you're obviously a young lawyer. You've got many years to go. Do you see, other offices coming into picture, international? Do you see any of those things in the future?
So that's been an easy question for us. I mean, we have now our biggest offices are Los Angeles and most recently New York. And we also have an office in Orange County, which is a legacy of having been at Irell and Manella, which had an LA and Orange County office. But we've long been of the view, in fact, when we launched, we really were of the view that sophisticated general counsel do not hire lawyers because they have physical offices in a particular city. They hire lawyers. And we've been very successful even before we opened New York in in fact, growing a national trial practice. New York was the one place that we had in mind for years as making sense because we had a number of clients located in New York. We have a number of New York barred attorneys, and there is a pipeline of talent available in the Northeastern corridor, not willing to come to Los Angeles, that we wanted to tap into. With that, I think we are done in terms of, office expansion, because we feel like we have the sort of footprint that underscores the fact that we are, a national trial firm. We have no aspirations to open international offices. We certainly handle matters that have international components, but we typically then ally ourselves with other boutiques and top-level firms with our clients when those cases arise.
Well, given how successful this has been and given how it seems like it has suited you so well, do you regret that you didn't start this earlier in your career?
No, I don't. And the practice of law, in many ways, it's interesting because often I hear griping from friends at other firms and people in my age range that, boy, new attorneys are not really ready for hard work. And my thought is, I think they are. You just have to pitch them the right way. And when you begin to reflect and accept the fact that becoming a great lawyer means a type of apprenticeship that Lincoln envisioned and went through, and if you can effectively, if you understand that and it becomes part of your DNA, then my answer to you is we launched at the perfect time. Because it took the kind of background and experience that I had amassed over time, both in the public sector and the private sector, to have the skills and ultimately to see the opportunity to execute on the vision of becoming a preeminent trial firm. We've been at it for 10 years. We achieved a level of success that, frankly, we had hoped for, but did not expect in this time. And so we're very excited with what we've accomplished to date.
Do you enjoy doing what you're doing now even more than the days of the government or exciting trials like, the Enron trial and stuff like that?
Well, each has different forms of excitement. So, I can remember the first couple years when I was a prosecutor. It was the most exciting time in my life. I mean, to be able to be a first-year trial lawyer in your mid-20s in cases that truly had an effect on people, or the Enron case where there was media from around the world watching you as you went in and out of the courthouse from your argument. I mean, that was both exciting and also the most frightening part of my career in many ways. But as I alluded to earlier, there's a time and place for everything. And so once, you had done some of the most sophisticated and complicated cases, there are things the government lacks. Sometimes, there isn't the flexibility to have your own kind of creative initiatives in the law if you're working within the government, and you have maybe limited freedom to associate and hire those who you think might accomplish a new and creative mission. And so I'd say that, I currently love what I'm doing because I've been able to capture some of what I really loved in the government, which is training and seeing, wonderful young talent become first-year trial lawyers. That's one of the things I really enjoyed in my job at the Department of Justice. And to do it on this platform and to have the ability to, we've launched a 501c3, the Social Justice Legal Foundation, where we can also train trial lawyers in the public interest. I feel like we've been able to execute from a private platform ideas and mechanisms for change in the public sector.
Do you ever see yourself retiring and doing something other than practicing law?
No, I can see my practice evolving and doing, more and more public interest and public facing work. But, I think I'm humble enough to know, what I've done well is lawyering. And so for as long as I can, I'm going to continue to look for opportunities to contribute on whatever platform will have me. And, certainly it's been very exciting to be able to have the freedom to do all that we've been doing, from Hueston Hennigan.
Well, John, it's been a fascinating conversation. It's an incredible story. Congratulations on the success of your own firm. And thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with me.
Well, thank you, Richard. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the opportunity to share with you.
This is Richard Hsu and John Hueston. Thanks.